All right, good morning. A little close. My name is Mark Velashin. I am the Deputy Secretary of State for Elections. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 9:03. Again, for the record, my name is Mark Velashin, Deputy Secretary for Elections. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Ms. Heather Hardy and Ms. Stacy Sunday from the Elections Division. First and foremost, if you are interested in participating in this meeting, you can call 1-888-475-4499 and then provide the meeting ID number, which is 840-0370-0657. Again, that is phone number 1-888-475-4499 with a meeting ID number of 840-0370-0657. When prompted for a participant ID, please press pound, then press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Agenda item 2, public comment on matters not on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes per person. Again, this is specifically to items that are not on the agenda for discussion today. If anyone is interested in providing public comment about a matter not on the agenda, please come forward and identify yourself and spell your name for the record. We'll start here in Carson, then we'll move to Las Vegas, and then I will ask broadcasting if there's anybody on the call. Here in Carson, none seen. Las Vegas, none seen. Nope. Broadcasting, anyone on the phone, please?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you so much. I will now close public comment and we'll move on to the Elections Procedure Manual. Agenda item 3, an introduction to the Elections Procedure Manual. So before we begin, I'm going to explain a little bit about why we are here and will provide the purpose of this series of 3 public meetings. Following the 2020 election cycle, there was an exodus of election officials across our state. That occurred for a number of reasons that we'll not go into today, but suffice to say that the increased rate of turnover led to the recognition that additional tools were needed to ensure that new elections officials were able to be onboarded and trained in a more efficient manner. You may not have realized it, but elections administration is complicated and detailed. A new elections official must quickly gain mastery of 9 chapters of state law specific to elections, with numerous other chapters that must be referenced, as well as our state constitution. Each of those 9 chapters of law has an associated chapter of regulation that also must be applied. There are additionally numerous federal laws that must be understood, as well as our U.S. Constitution and its amendments. All of these together create a complex web of inalienable rights that must be followed to ensure that the U.S. citizens who make up the Nevada electorate are able to vote in a manner of their choosing in free and fair elections. The 2023 legislature considered this challenge and ultimately passed Senate Bill 54, which was signed by the governor and then codified into NRS 293.2502. It's a short statute, so I will read it in its entirety now. NRS 293.2502, Elections Procedure Manual, Requirements, Submission to Legislative Commission. Subsection 1. At least once every 2 years, the Secretary of State shall prepare, maintain, and publish an Elections Procedures Manual to ensure correctness, impartiality, uniformity, and efficiency in the elections procedures of the state. Each county clerk and city clerk is required to comply with the procedures set forth in the most current version of the Elections Procedure Manual. Subsection 2. The Elections Procedure Manual required pursuant to subsection 1 must, without limitation, guidance, and standards for administering an election that are consistent with the provisions of this title and any regulations adopted by the Secretary of State pursuant thereto. Subsection 3. The most recent version of the Elections Procedure Manual, prepared pursuant to subsection 1, must be submitted by the Secretary of State to the Legislative Commission for approval not less frequently than every 4 years. The Secretary of State may make any change to the Elections Procedure Manual that is not substantively related to administering an election without the approval of the Legislative Commission. And finally, subsection 4, nothing in this section authorizes the Secretary of State to include any provision in the Elections Procedure Manual that amends or conflicts with any provision of state or federal law or regulations. Again, that was added to NRS in 2023. There are two key parts of that statute that I'd like to highlight before we get started. First, the entire purpose of the Elections Procedure Manual is captured in the first subsection, quote, to ensure correctness, impartiality, uniformity, and efficiency in the elections procedures of this state, end quote. That's the exact goal and direction we've been working towards as this procedure manual has been developed over the last few years. Second, subsection 4 clarifies that the Elections Procedure Manual cannot amend or conflict with any provision of state or federal law or regulations. To clarify, our laws are created by our elected legislators and must be signed by the governor. Regulations must also follow a very specific process before ultimately being approved by the Legislative Commission, a body made up of 12 elected legislators. In other words, this procedure manual cannot conflict with either law or regulation, but rather provides clarity on those laws and regulations. So here's how this will work today. In a moment, Heather will read into the record a description of one chapter of the Elections Procedure Manual. We will then go to public comment so that you can provide feedback on that chapter. Once we are done, we'll move to the next chapter, and the process will repeat itself until we're done. We have split the chapters of the Elections Procedure Manual into 3 days, specifically to enable members of the public opportunities to provide feedback without sacrificing an entire day, and to ensure that we are not rushed in the process. I do want to clarify also that if somebody is unable to attend tomorrow or Friday's meeting, then it's of course acceptable to provide the feedback on those chapters today, and vice versa. I want to remind everyone that our discussion today during this meeting will be focused on the proposed chapters of the Elections Procedure Manual listed in the agenda. We should not discuss changing our state laws, which of course, as I mentioned, are created by the legislature. This meeting series will not alter any existing laws. The Elections Procedure Manual cannot make something illegal that is otherwise legal, nor make something legal that is otherwise illegal. If there are general questions about elections procedures, we'll be able to discuss them today, as long as they relate generally to the procedure manual and the chapters in the agenda. If there are questions that extend beyond the items on the agenda, we would be more than happy to set up a separate meeting at another time. To do so, please contact us at nvelect@sos.nv.gov. Again, that's nvelect@sos.nv.gov. Finally, a few administrative notes. We will be taking notes while you are providing comments. If you see us looking down, it is because we are typing or reading. When we get to public comment, we will take public comment first here in Carson City, then in Las Vegas, and finally via Zoom. To be clear, this meeting is a discussion. If you ask a question, as long as it's related to the agenda item, we'll be able to answer it. If we don't have an answer, we'll get back to you with that answer. Once we are complete here today, my team and I will discuss and analyze your suggestions, bringing them to the county clerks for input if necessary, before ultimately making recommendations to the secretary. Finally, I understand that discussions about elections can get intense, and I'm excited about talking with you today. But I must insist that everyone treat each other with dignity and respect. Your fellow Americans in this room and listening today may have different opinions, but they are worthy of your courtesy. Okay, that being said, we'll go to agenda item 4, and I'll turn it over to Heather for a review of chapter 1.
Thanks, Mark. Before I begin, I'd like to clarify for the record that our work on the Elections Procedure Manual is not complete, nor will it likely ever be complete. What you see online is our latest update, but work will continue over the next 2 years as we continue to find ways to improve it. The Elections Procedure Manual has 4 main audiences. The first consists of state election officials, which generally includes the members of the Secretary of State's Elections Division. The second consists of county election officials, who have a number of unique statutory responsibilities separate from both state and city election officials. The third consists of city election officials, and the fourth consists of members of the public. Our goal is to establish the Elections Procedure Manual as the go-to document for anyone as an initial starting point for any questions about elections, voting, and registering to vote, candidate filing, petitions, and many other elections-related topics. While we routinely get feedback from other election officials across the state, this part in the process that we're doing today is critical to ensuring that you, Members of the public can provide feedback on the manual so that we can continue to make it better so that it meets your needs. For example, one change has already been identified. On October 9th, Dominion Voting Systems was purchased. Their name was changed to Liberty Vote. We will go through the procedure manual to reflect the name change prior to submission to the Legislative Commission. Other more substantial recommendations that we've received will be applied to the next version of the procedure manual that will be published prior to the 2028 election cycle. Turning now to the elections procedure manual itself. Chapter 1 consists of general information. This chapter is essentially an overview to the state's processes and how elections are administered in Nevada. You'll notice that it does not go into an exhaustive history of the information, and as the information is already provided in the Political History of Nevada, a document published by the Secretary of State, and that it's included online as a PDF. Chapter 1 talks in general terms about roles and responsibilities, acting as an introduction to the statutes and regulations. As a reminder, this is just a plain language introduction and cannot conflict with statute or regulation. This chapter also includes information about how to submit a public records request, information about the protections available to election officials, voters, and various categories of public servants, legal compliance and how to submit a complaint or allegation of an election-related crime, an overview of our approach to community outreach, information about the Advisory Committee on Participatory Democracy and the subgroup, the Youth Advisory Task Force, and information about other awards and programs that the Secretary oversees. While not comprehensive, the first chapter is intended as an overview and is set up to answer some of the most common questions that we receive. Now, I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather. At this time, we will open up public comment on Chapter 1 of the Elections Procedure Manual, and we will start here in Carson City. Anyone interested in making public comment relating to Chapter 1 of the EPM, please come up to the table and state your name for the record. Let me pull up Mark Voloshin for the record. There is a gentleman here who's interested in providing public comment. Just want to make sure that he has the right chapter. Chapter 2 is voters.
Chapter 2 is voters?
Yeah, is it?
Yeah. I'll just submit some public comment on the record.
Okay. Perfect. Then nobody else here in Carson City, so we will go down to Las Vegas for public comment in Las Vegas. If there's anybody in Las Vegas interested in making public comment, please come to the table and state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Edmund Euling, and I'm deeply concerned about this process because of the way that you, Mark, and your boss handled the election last time, where you declared yourselves agents of limiting the number of candidates that should be on the ballot. And I was specifically affected by that. And filed all my data on correctly, and and at the correct moment and talk to you personally a month after I had submitted that, the problems, and you never responded to it. In fact, you quoted another race. You referred to the only letter you wrote to me involved another race in northern Nevada. I would really am concerned that you talk about that we want free elections. You did everything you could to prevent nonpartisan people from getting on the ballot. And I'm wondering, how are you going to protect us from another round of that? Or, of course, I'm worried that you're creating a whole system to give yourself more power to actually do that sort of thing. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments, Mr. Euling. Mark Voloshin for the record. I want to reassure you that while I understand that the process identified for filing as a candidate who's an independent candidate for partisan office pursuant to NRS 293-200 is complicated and can be frustrating at times, this office, including myself, the secretary, and my colleagues in the elections division, as well as in the county offices, will do everything that they can to streamline the process and make it clear for you. And while I'm sorry that there may be some frustration, it sounds like, from what happened in the last election cycle, I do want to reassure you that, again, if you have questions, you know how to get in touch with me, and we can talk about that process to make sure that you're comfortable with it before the start of the next filing period. But I do appreciate your feedback and look forward to talking with you again.
I'll be glad to say something else.
Mr. Euling, Mark Voloshin for the record, do you happen to have any commentary or feedback on the procedure manual itself by any chance?
Well, you said you'll get back to me. I called to try to get information about this meeting. I called your office from here in Southern Nevada by the airport. And I had my phone ringing for 1 hour, more than 1 hour, before someone answered it. And I was able to talk to the person there and so the idea that one can just call you up and find out things is just totally false.
Mark Voloshin for the record. Again, Mr. Euling, I want to reassure you, I talk to people routinely. 775-684-5705 or the email address I mentioned earlier, nvelect@sos.nv.gov, are the two primary ways to get in touch with me. So, again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas who's interested in making public comment relating to Chapter 1 of the Elections Procedure Manual? Okay, broadcasting, could you please check on the phones?
If you would like to provide public comment on Chapter 1, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Yes, good morning. My name is Iris Stone, Stone. Regarding public records request section, the text reads that the Nevada Secretary of State's office is committed to providing access to public records in accordance with Nevada law. All public records, the contents of which are not otherwise declared by law to be confidential, are open for inspection or to obtain copies, unquote. Unfortunately, there's a significant increase in public opinion that there is no such commitment. Case in point, in November 2023, a Nevada voter sent a public records request into the Nevada Secretary of State's office. Since that request was sent in 2023, the voter has received no less than 13 memorandums asking for additional time to be provided to provide the records. The last memo extended receipt time to December 2025. This totals 2 years of waiting for access to a requested public record. This is extremely puzzling and questionable because the information requested was used in 2023 to support legislation that was passed that year. One would think it would already be assembled and easily accessible. How many more times will this public records request be postponed going forward? Until eternity? It surely doesn't suggest a transparent government. Is it maybe that the Nevada government has to admit that there is no defense for legislation that was passed, that there is no proof? Or should the operations manual be updated to say that expectations about response time to records requests can take years? Now on a different topic, regarding the community outreach section. The text reads in part, Nevada is building a more informed participatory electorate, ensuring every member of our community has the chance to vote and have their voice to be heard. We respectfully request that this should read, quote, ensuring that every eligible member of our community has a chance to vote and have their voice to be heard, unquote. So we should add the word eligible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Mark Velasquez for the record. To clarify for everyone listening at home, she first referenced the public records request section on page 7 of chapter 1, and then the community outreach section on page 13. But we appreciate your feedback, and we'll take that into consideration.
Moving on to the next caller. If you recently joined, also please press star 9 for a public comment for chapter 1. So again, if you recently joined, please press star 9.
Hello, could you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mark, Mr. Mark Velasquez. This is Dora Martinez. I want to say thank you for making the EPM accessible. I'm reading it and through headings, and there's a search bar where I can search terminology. So I appreciate all that you do to make voting accessible. And you and your staff are always answering phone calls and emails. So I'm sorry for the gentleman that said that you don't, but you do. Even at midnight, you reply to emails. So thank you so much for making voting accessible and for all who are eligible to vote. That's my comment because I don't have anything to add to the procedure itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. I very much appreciate your feedback, and want to reassure you that while I believe under Secretary Aguilar's guidance, we've come leaps and bounds when it comes to accessibility. Collectively we are pleased but not satisfied, and still feel there's more that we can do and will continue to do. But I very much appreciate your acknowledgement of how far we've come. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ellen Gifford. The Secretary's message in this manual declares that the manual is part of your effort to ensure complex requirements are executed consistently and faithfully across Nevada. This highlights the importance of having the election officials who will execute these requirements review and provide input to this manual. Has this been done? Next, political history of Nevada. Since 1981, Nevadans, Democrat and Republican, have conducted caucuses to choose their candidates. Caucuses conducted by the people are just as much a part of Nevada's political history as state-held primaries and should be included in this section. Next, local election officials. This section refers to NRS 293D-040, which describes local election officials as city and county clerks and registrars of voters. Then it states the terms clerk and registrar are used interchangeably in this document, referring to 293-040, which describes an election board officer appointed by the county clerk to perform certain duties at a single poll location. They're neither a city or county clerk or a registrar of voters and can't be used interchangeably with them. An election board officer can't be responsible for precinct creation as described in the manual's chapter 3. Next, election procedures training. Shouldn't registrars of voters attend this training in addition to the county and city clerks? Next, the protecting threat table. This section uses indefinite pronouns like anyone, any person, any individual as possible perpetrators of unlawful activities. However, in the table, citizens who observe their elections are given a label, stigmatized, and discriminated against by being specifically singled out as an example of a perpetrator. Please correct this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gifford. Mark Velash for the record. If I may, I don't want to burden you with asking that you submit it in writing also. So if I may ask some questions just to make sure I've captured that appropriately between my colleagues and I. I do kind of jump through these fairly quickly. Your first question was essentially, has it been reviewed by the county and city election officials? Is that accurate?
I'm so sorry. The automated system was talking while you were talking, telling me to unmute. Can you ask that again, please?
Yes, ma'am. I just want to make sure that I capture your comments and questions and feedback properly. Of the four, the first one was, has the procedure manual been reviewed appropriately by county and city officials? Is that accurate?
It is.
Okay, yes. In that case, I can say it's an ongoing process. The procedure manual has been provided to our county and city election officials for some time. I know that, again, if you talk to them, and I certainly encourage you to talk to your local election official, you'll hear that they're extremely busy. Some have previously given feedback. Some have, in fact, scheduled times to give us feedback. We have one individual in the room here in Carson City with us right now today, in fact, the Carson City clerk. So yes, bottom line, we realize that it's vital to get feedback, not only from the election officials and their staff members across our state, but also from members of the public. So again, this is also, to be perfectly clear, not the sort of document that, after today, once the Legislative Commission approves it, we're going to lock it up and then forget about it. Like, it's a living document. There should be improvements. Ms. Gifford, I know that you are engaged during the election cycle and likely will be next year. I encourage you to look at it and provide us feedback based on your own experiences too, to see how we can potentially make it better for future generations. So that's the first question. Second question, you asked about the caucus process and making sure that we incorporate some information about the caucus process. I see your point. Again, caucuses are not governed by Title 24 in the statute, as they are run by private organizations. But I understand your concern and consideration in regards to that part of the process. So I'll take that back and we'll discuss it. Your third one, you very astutely captured that I cited the wrong statute. I cited NRS 293-040. In a second you said that, I was like, that's not the right one. 044 is the statute I had intended to. NRS 293-044 says county clerk defined synonymous with registrar of voters in certain counties, except as the term is used in 293-393, whenever the term, quote, county clerk, end quote, is used in this title, it means registrar of voters in those counties where such office has been created pursuant to the provisions of NRS 244-164. So thank you for catching that citation. That was incorrect. We'll correct that one as well. And then lastly, your question, the fourth one, was about the training. And I apologize. Your question specifically was, why aren't registrars of voters attending the training? I want to reassure you they are. We do not limit, when we talk about clerks, to be perfectly clear, as it mentioned in that statute, we're talking about the 2 registrars of voters in Clark County and Washoe County, our 15 elected clerks in the other 15 counties, but also our 18 clerks in the cities that have city election officials as well. All of them are involved in all of it. Bottom line, there are varying degrees of statutory responsibility in those 3 different groups. The registrars, who are 100% dedicated to elections all the time, every day, and their staffs, county clerks who have a large number of additional responsibilities extending far beyond elections, and then city clerks in the very same position. But we do include them all because they are election officials, and it's important that we get their feedback into this process and include them as mentioned in the training. So again, excellent flag, but I want to reassure you that we're good on that one. And again, thank you very much for your time today and your feedback.
May I ask, do you have anything to say about the table and?
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Your fourth one. Do you mind repeating that? I searched for any one, and I found on page 10 that talks about the protections for public servants, and I believe that's where that one is different.
It's the table.
Oh, I'm pulling it up. One second. I see. I think the intent is to align the pronouns more accurately from the table to elsewhere in the chapter. Is that accurate?
What I did was I said that any person, any individual, that's used throughout that section when it's talking about protection. And in the table that is on page, it's on page 9, in the very last section of the table, undue influence, and it uses an election observer as an example. There's no other place in that section that gives any specific position like poll worker or election board officer, but election observer is singled out in that table as an example of someone who would use undue influence. If you could just take that example out.
Yes, ma'am. I understand. I appreciate the clarity. Mark Voloshin for the record. I do see that now, and I understand and have made a note of that. Thank you for the clarification.
I thank you. I thank you very, very much for all you're doing.
If you recently joined the call and would like to provide public comment for Chapter 1, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Hello, good morning. Just want to make sure you can hear me. This is the first time in a long time I've called in.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect, thanks. My name is Sydney Williams, SYDNEYWILLIAMS. Mostly testifying in my private capacity, but regarding the Youth Advisory Task Force section of Chapter 1, it does state that the Youth Advisory Task Force was created under the bylaws of the Authority Advisory Committee on Participatory Democracy to increase civic awareness among Nevada's high school and college students. It's my understanding that in the bylaws of the Youth Advisory Task Force, the focus is on Nevada voters under 25. And so I just wanted to ensure that that statement is reflected accurately in the manual, and so we don't have any confusion there for our purpose.
Mark Voloshin for the record. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Excellent call out, and we will make that correction as well. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Chair, we have no additional callers for public comment.
Thank you so much, broadcasting. We will now One moment. All right, we will close public comment on Chapter 1, and I will turn it back over to Ms. Hardy for a review of Chapter 2.
Thank you, Mark. Chapter 2 consists of information for and about voters. This chapter is intended to be a quick reference guide and also to address many of the most common questions we receive that are specific to registered voters. Chapter 2 talks in general terms about roles and responsibilities, acting as an introduction to the statutes and regulations. As a reminder, this is just a plain language introduction and cannot conflict with statute or regulation. Chapter 2 includes information about who is eligible to vote, how a qualified elector can register to vote, the status of a voter's registration and how it is verified, voter registration statistics, list maintenance requirements for voter registration during election years and non-election years, voter challenges, and language services offered to Nevada's voters. Although not exhaustive, the second chapter provides an overview of voter registration in Nevada and aims to address some of the most frequently asked questions we receive. Now, I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Thank you, Heather. We will now open public comment on Chapter 2, starting here in Carson City. Anybody interested in providing public comment on Chapter 2, please come up to the table and state your name for the record.
Good morning. My name is David O'Mara. I'm an attorney in Reno, Nevada. I'm here to testify or to give my comments in regards to Chapter 2. I certainly appreciate the comments from the chair, if I can call you the chair of this meeting, regarding the importance of a guideline setting forth the statutes that are put into place as well as the regulations. But I want to provide that, and I understand we have public comment today, so but these guidelines are very important for registrar voters who historically have changed over. They're elected in some counties, and so it is very important for them to understand what's going on. But also voters, as well as campaigns, need to know what is and what can be done without really reading all of the statutes, which I think is the reasoning for this. So. And I've been doing this probably for 25 years myself, on and off. And when I first got into election law, I had to do a manual for ourselves, and it was very difficult. And I appreciate all the work that you're doing now, because it's going to seem like I'm not, but I really am, because I'm going to go over a lot of things. And I appreciate the chairman's comments before we got on the record that I can provide comments to you afterwards and things of that nature. But my first comment in regards to probably the entire thing is that there are lots of statutes and there are a lot of regulations, and there's a lot of conclusatory statements within this document that we really have to find a way to be more specific than general. And one of the ways to do that is that when you do make a comment, you follow it up with a statute of what authority the Secretary of State has, or what authority the Registrar of Voters have, or the county clerks, because as you know, certain things are for the Secretary of State, and certain things are for the county clerks and the Registrar of Voters, and they need to kind of know where they're going. The madam who was giving the introduction also made comments. Well, let me go back to the statutes. As you can see, everybody makes mistakes, and we're going to all make mistakes, and I'm probably going to get called out on some mistakes myself today, but having the dialogue is really what we're trying to get. But we had someone already say that there was a statute wrong. So if we have those statutes and regulations really in place, I think that that's going to provide more information for everybody involved. And as the madam stated today in regards to, this is not an exhaustive guideline, but it really has to be. It really has to be almost exhaustive to nauseam, because we don't want to have situations which have happened in the past in this state where we had in 1963 where there was a recount that the Supreme Court had to deal with, and we also had what I was involved in with the ballot royale that no one ever wants to go back in. And interestingly enough, we still have not passed a statute to determine how the House of Representatives is going to be elected if we have that problem again. So I certainly understand the situation. So if we could go, one of the things that we go into in the registration form, and it may be within another section, but what I didn't see is any section that talks about a voter who moves but has not given up his registration. And they are not entitled to a ballot. I mean, they will not get a ballot. And so there's nothing in here that says, my understanding is that when we look at page, let me just go into page 13. If we go to page 13, you guys give a breakdown of the active pending, inactive, right? But there's another, because of the mail-in ballot situation, we have those individuals who are active, but they don't live at their registered location anymore, they've moved. And under an NRS code, they're not allowed to get the ballot forwarded to them. So we need to have something in the guidelines that talks about how the registrar of voters or know that these individuals are how they will be able to get a ballot when that happens. And so that is really important. And I think that when I get to some of the omissions that we don't have in this, there is a clear way that not only helps with list maintenance, but it also helps with protecting the rights of voters who move away, fill out a national change of address form so that we can get a hold of them and either remove them from the list or make sure that they're going to get a ballot in the mail-in ballot. And I'll get to that in a few minutes.
Mr. Amaro, Mark Flashman, do you mind if I make it more of a dialogue so that instead of waiting for you to get to the end and then I jump back to question one, if it's possible?
I don't mind a hot bench.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
Please do. Yeah.
So first of all, I appreciate you recognizing the kind of monumental undertaking that Heather and the team have had to make to get this. And I think you probably better than most are keenly aware that for a very long time, when folks said, I want to run for office, I want to do a thing that relates to the conduct of an election, oftentimes the answer was, here's 9 chapters of statute. Just read that real quick and you'll be perfect. Oh, and then the regulations, don't forget those too. So I understand your comment about trying to make sure that it's inclusive. As you can see, and this will certainly, I think, be a big part of our ongoing challenge, how do you make it small enough so that it's usable without it just being a photocopy of the statutes and regulations? So that I'm eager to hear, and we'll continue to ask questions about how we can improve it in each of the different sections too.
I think that the statutory regulations that you provide with the general comment is the way to go. And,
Okay.
And it's my understanding, and if you may be able to go back in history, but I don't know, I think it was Secretary Sagaski, she used to have a manual in regards to certain things. And it was kind of like boilerplate, just it's not as good as this for sure, because this is more in layman's term and easier to read, but she used to have it broken down like statutes, but it was only like 20 pages instead of, is the most. And so this is far better than anything because it's easy for the normal, it's easy for lawyers to read. And it's also easier for lay people or people that want to be a candidate. So I really appreciate those comments. And the way it is set up is way better.
And I appreciate it. Mark Voss for the record. So those guides that Secretary Sagaski had developed with the team were the nucleus of the different sections. So if they look familiar in the text, it's because the candidate guide was in fact the starting point for the chapter on candidate running for office. When you say cite, just to get even into the more nitty gritty, do you mean kind of that legal style after the paragraph in parentheses NRS 293.1276 or something?
So in many of the situations, you have cited the statutes.
Okay.
And I think that in almost anyone we can, I think you want to cite it. It's
Understand.
kind of like, when you're providing a paper to the professor, you cite everything that you can. And so I think that some of them are cited, of course, but the other things that are not cited, and I will go over a couple of them today, we need to have those citations and the regulations as well, because sometimes the statute says something, but when you get into the regulations and the nitty gritty, it actually it provides the actual reasoning for what you're saying. I mean, you may say something in this manual, and if you only cite to the statute, it will cause confusion because I will not look at the regulation, and that's a problem. And that's because not a lot of people read the regulations after the statute. And so I think that will be something beneficial to everyone, especially, well, it'd be beneficial to everyone because if I have a question and I look at it and I'm like, well, okay, the Secretary of State cited this statute and this statute, I'm going to go to both of those. That's where my starting and jumping point is going to be, of whether or not the manual does not increase something that is not allowed by law, or says something that is allowed by law, or doesn't say something that is allowed by law.
And that's a great point too, because that'll make it easier to update when the legislature changes various statutes. It's easier to control F for the appropriate statute or regulation.
So, I mean, I don't think it's any shock to you that since you do have probably a little, we've never met before, but I think you have a familiarity with me a little bit. But the list maintenance issue is, there are a lot of things in here that I would like to go over that may be contradictory, or I'm just not reading them right, or they're just confusing. So if we could go to page 16 and 17, we start at the list maintenance section. Okay, and this talks about how things can be removed, which is great, and then it talks about the removal of people off of the guidelines. And so I think this is a really good part of where you have to cite where you're going to go because of the situation. And I think that we're missing a few challenges and citations of law that the Secretary of State or the Register of Voters and people need to know about. But the large data matching process is in here, but then it kind of conflicts with your next paragraph when you talk about the Electronic Registration Information Center, which is ERIC, which is also a large data matching process. And I'm not sure, I would like to be able to see where that authority comes from, where the ERIC is allowed under statute. Because if you know that under NRS 293.675, it gives the Secretary of State only various things to do in regards to monitoring election votes with the Social Security Administration. And then it allows for the DMV to then enter into agreements. But nothing within that statute allows for anyone to take private information from our citizens, such as Social Security information, and provide it to a third party. And that's very concerning because we don't know what information is being sent to a third party. And the manual specifically says that it's going to be confidential in some aspects, which really cannot occur in a transparency of voter rights. We cannot have confidentiality of what, I mean, of course we can have confidentiality of your Social Security number and things of that nature, but we cannot have confidentiality of certain things. And so I don't believe, and I don't know the answer to this, and I mean, whether there's a regulation or something, but I don't believe ERIC. And I think it would be important for the clerks to know why and what authority ERIC has. Because if you look at, it says, Nevada statewide voter registration systems facilitates this clerk's responsibility by cross-checking voter addresses against the data from the Nevada Department of Motor Vehicles, the United States Postal Service National Change of Address, and the Electronic Registration Information Center. And I think you're trying to make it easier for us to understand, but each one of those is done by someone different, right? The Secretary of State has the responsibility of checking, or the DMV. That's not a clerk's responsibility. That's the Secretary of State's. The United States Postal Service National Change of Address. That's a clerk's responsibility. And then ERIC is my understanding, has been done by the Secretary of State's office. I'm just going to go. I'm going to take advantage of the ERIC form because we look at this, and when you turn to page 18, you then go over what ERIC is. And this is really confusing to me, or concerning to me. First, it says the most reliable resource available for flagging outdated registrations is ERIC. I've never seen anything that would justify a comment like that. I don't have any statistics that says that Eric is the most justified thing. The other thing that needs to occur is that I think this is also subject to NRS 530B, I think, where where county clerks have the right to use reliable information. 530, but under 5B, so in order for you to justify Eric as a reliable resource, there's got to be more information that's provided to the communities as well as the Register of Voters, such as Eric does not do all 50 states. So is it really reliable to utilize this service if we're not only going to get a certain amount of states? What is Eric using to utilize that? I think there's some information about that, but the question is that do we only provide to the Registrar of Voters Eric under a different analysis? For example, if Eric runs the national change of address and hits on someone that has changed their address, does the Registrar of Voters get that information, or does Eric only provide if they have multiple hits on multiple databases? That's also problematic because Nevada law allows for, under NRS 293.5303 and 5307, that the registrars and county clerk can use the national change of address form and send a notice to those people that have moved, which not only can remove them under the statute after two missed elections, but also gives and protects those individuals that have moved, that do not understand that their mail-in ballot is not going to be forwarded to them. They will get that notice and they will be able to be protected than otherwise thinking on the election day going, oh great, wait, I never got my mail-in ballot and I live in Wisconsin. That's a problem that we have to do in order to move forward with that. So when we look at Eric, there has to be something in here that says what Eric is and what it provides and how you believe it would be a reliable thing, because the county clerks and the Register of Voters are the ones that get to determine whether it is a reliable and reasonable means available to correct the portions of the statewide voter registration. The second thing that I find to be troubling with Eric is that you also put in your manual that third-party databases have to be approved by the county commissioners. And I take the comment from the chairman this morning. It was really important because of the movement with registrars and clerks. How do we know that this has been approved by every county commissioner? Okay, and if this is the case where the Secretary of State is just saying you can use this, but you don't have to get your county commissioners, what's the difference between a third party coming out and using databases? There's no difference whatsoever. That's why the statute's in there. If you do an investigation, which this clearly is, where every 60 days, Nevada's DMV voter registration records are uploaded to Eric. The other thing about it is that we have to provide our Registrar of Voters, as well as our county clerks, confirmation that what information actually is uploaded. We have registration information and DMV records that are subject to confidentiality. And there's nothing in here that says that we are only uploading documents that of a registered voter. And there's nothing in here to say we only provide a non-confidential information. For example, if a judge has their name on the non-confidentiality list, is the Secretary of State forwarding all the voter registration, even those confidential ones, to a third party? If they are, that's probably a violation of Nevada law. This is a criminal action of providing confidential information to a third party. Now, I'm not trying to be combative here, because I know that Eric was not the system that the Secretary started with. It was in place before that, and I think that as in most election cases, it's always reactionary, and this is very straightforward, taking the fence. This is why I'm here. So
Mr. Mayor, may I comment on
Yes,
Eric?
please.
Mark Voloshin for the record. So appreciate your comments, and definitely going to take back and talk with the team about how we can increase the amount of information about the Electronic Registration Information Center, or ERIC, in the procedure manual. I think too, and this is something even in the roughly 5 years I've been in this position, I guess now, where we've noticed that the generalization of how ERIC works does nobody service. The reality is that the technical methods by which we use the ERIC system to keep our voter rolls clean, with, as you said, it's not all 50 states plus DC and the territories, it's actually 25 states plus DC. But that process, I think, is worthy, especially now more than ever in the last couple of years, of being fully explained for the electorate. We don't send information. It gets encrypted here, and then the encryptions across the other 25 member states plus DC are compared. So it's these hash codes that are assessed as being matches. We don't provide anyone's private information to ERIC. We don't send it anywhere, because you're absolutely right. That would be criminal in nature and unethical on top of a number of other things. Still an important tool in helping to ensure our voter rolls, but I think the bottom line is, one, we need to increase the amount of detail and explanation to provide that clarity and reassurance, including the statutory authority to be engaged in that system. And then the one other thing I wanted to mention is that, as you highlighted too in that second paragraph, and I'm looking now on page 18 under the ERIC section, and really even the list maintenance section above that as well. All of these different methods for voter list maintenance, starting on page 16, they all talk about essentially comparisons that ultimately are done. And you mentioned the secretary having a role in that. But I want to reassure you that while there's a technical comparison piece, all of the information ultimately is provided to our 17 county election officials, the clerks and registrars, because under statute, they alone have the authority to make those sorts of changes. So while the state may receive information from Vital Statistics, while we receive information now from the Department of Corrections in a relatively new process by which the Department of Corrections sends us a list daily of every felon who has started in incarceration, while we conduct a technical comparison of that list to our statewide voter registration list to identify individuals who register voters but need to have their registrations canceled pursuant to 293 as well. Those actions are done at the county level. And if we say, because it turns out, and this is a good example with the Department of Corrections, turns out not every felon is honest about their name or birth date before they start their incarceration. If the county election official says, I see the first name matches, I see the last name matches, birth date doesn't, some other information doesn't, even if it may seem, it's ultimately a county decision to cancel, for example, that voter registration. And if it doesn't match, I will tell you they defer in my conversations with them to not, because it's better to not cancel a registration than to risk disenfranchising somebody.
Right. I think the process that they most normally go through is that if there is a similar name that doesn't match all of them, they at least send them the notice saying that we would like you just to update your records, because I know that I've received that myself in East Washoe County. So you're right. I think that if there is not a hit, then that's one of the reasons why we do that. And that gets me to the next point. What is really missing here, and it really has to be in here, is the Register of Voters and the clerk's authority to use the national change of address, which has been on the books for many, many years. And it's completely, there's very general statements to it, but it needs to be a full section of what the Register of Voters and the clerk should do. One, under NRS 293-5303, they can contract with the U.S. Postal Service or a third-party vendor that has access and authority to obtain the United States Postal Service information. First of all, it's my understanding that ERIC costs the state about $1 million or over a period of time, but that could be wrong. But it's far more expensive than getting a list of the national change of address. The national change of address also can be published every month. It doesn't have to be every 60 days, or it could be 60 days based on what based on what the registrar wants to do. It could be 90 days. I would suggest it's a lot different, but the reasoning that this needs to be in there is that this is a specific tool that the Nevada legislature has provided, okay? And it is the under 5303, it is discretionary. They don't have to do it, but once they do it, okay, then they must send notices when they get the notice of change of address. And the thing that is problematic in here is that this is a specific statute. And what we have here is a system that kind of circumvents it from the Secretary of State's position by saying, you don't need to do that, we'll get you ERIC. Okay, ERIC is only 25 states, but let's do ERIC instead. So it gives this false sense of security by saying we're going to use ERIC then when we have this great system of using national change of address. And the thing that we have in this is that it can be clearly set out. Look, you don't have to do this, but you can, and if you get this, here's what it happens. This registrar of voters will call up and find out it's probably like $20. It's for them to run it. It's very cheap. They will get the information and they will send out a notice under 293-530. If that notice is not returned, if that notice is returned for cancellation, things of that nature, they get to take that. But those people, will be removed from the active list and put on inactive for the two elections, general elections. They're not canceled yet. But they are removed from the active. It will create a significant financial boom for the counties who do not have to send ballots to inactive people that have not voted and have changed their address. And most importantly, which is kind of lucky, I think, for us, because not only our statutes are not very good, but this statute really helps when we started doing mail-in ballots, because this is really the only way that you can get a hold of a registered voter who has moved to make sure that they're going to get their ballot. It's a 100% positive thing, because if you get a notice of change of address every 30 days, and you send a notice every 30 days pursuant to NRS 293-530, that person's going to get it, and they're going to say, wait, I'm only going to be gone for 3 months. I'm a college student. I've done a notice of change of address and things of that nature. The other thing that you're going to get is that every election, since I've been doing this, there is always someone that says, oh, look at these 800 voters. And out of those 800 voters, there's 50 that are in the Air Force. There's 25 that are and they say, look at all, and it causes chaos. And my party is just as guilty of that stuff. And that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that these are specific so that we don't have the fly-by-night organizations that come in and throw up all these things and say this election is this way. That is not what we're here for. We're here to make sure it says every 30 days we send it out. Our list maintenances are going to be cleaned up in 9 months, and they're going to be great because we're going to have everybody there. So I think it's really, really important that that is available not only for the public, so that the public can start contacting the registrar of voters and their county clerks to say, we want you to do this. County commissioners can say, hey, we want you to do this. And the Secretary of State can say, this is another one. And it's clear that the Secretary of State likes that, because in the next section about challenges, it says that when you get a affidavit or something of that nature, you should confirm by using the national change of address form. And we'll get to that in a second. So that is above and beyond what you have to do in regards to the section that I'll get to, but it shows that we have that ability, and we need to have that within it. So I would suggest that there is a section specifically into their registrar of voters that they have NRS 293.530, 5303 and 5307 to maintain their voter rolls, but through the national change of address forms, which I think will be not only financially helpful for the counties in regards to sending ballots, sample ballots, all of that stuff, but it will also protect the voters who are unaware that they may not get the vote because their ballot was not forwarded under the new mail-in ballots.
Mr. Marr, may I? Mark Flosh for the record. Two quick comments. One, I'm looking at the invoice from Eric. This is over a 12-month period from July 1st of 25 up through June 30th of 26. A grand total of $1,884. so not quite a million.
Well, that's clearly not even close. So I would like to find out from who told me that and see what that is. But
Send them my way as well, please, and I can provide
and
them.
that's something that, I mean, that is something that we'll have to do. And my understanding was it came out of the budget. So who knows what
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that for the record.
Thank you for doing. I mean, that is great. Thank you.
The other comment I want to make about the national change of address process, two things. First of all, Secretary Aguilar continues to push us at the state as well as the counties to think about what has been done in the past and what can we do better. Not to just do things because we do things. The national change of address process has made some changes over the last couple of years. Used to be that they didn't allow you to identify if it was a short-term move. They recently, and this was in the past, I think year or two, now added a box. When I moved my family here in Carson City, and we went through the process, it asks you, is this less than 3 months or less than 6 months? Trying to indicate if it's a summer move or someone's taking care of grandma, that sort of thing. A temporary move, perhaps to school or something. Because that wasn't there before, I know in talking to some of our clerks and registrars who've been around for longer periods than I would have been, that because Nevadans are so transient and because so many folks want to, rightly so, I think, move to our state, it was a problem where folks would move to, especially our larger counties, the larger 5 of Clark, Washoe, Carson, Lyon, and Douglas, but then oftentimes would move inside the counties. Oftentimes would leave for to go home for summer or come back and forth, and would use the NCOA process. And I've heard that when it was used, and this is obviously years ago now, more often than not, folks would say, "Why'd you change that? Like I wanted to keep my original address." That being said, again, if the system has changed, if the opportunities are there to continue improving our list maintenance processes, then it's absolutely worthy of assessment. So I just want to reassure you that we will take and continue to take a close look at that and see what we can do to improve the process collectively.
Yeah. One of the things I will add is that if you go back into the legislative history, all the way back to 1976, which is I think the last time I was able to. I mean, one of the things that was done when we were talking about this statute. Of course, I wasn't talking since I was born that year, but was a candidate that talked about having these list maintenance and having this process is necessary also for candidates because they spend an awful lot of time walking precincts. And spending money in that regard, and that's one of the things. And I think that that what we can't lose face in the fact that the registrar of voters down in Clark County was one of the major persons that was against using the national change of address, or really about the challenges, the issue, because you get a lot of these things and they would have to spend money. But the thing about it is, since that's happened, we've also had mail-in ballot that's changed, which is what I said is like kind of a gift that we have this statute already on there, because now we have a mechanism to try to teach people, such as the person that checks 3 months or 6 months, right? It doesn't really matter in that regard whether they check 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, because we need to know where they live in order to get them a ballot if they are a valid resident, and we need to know if they are not, whether or not we can just go ahead and remove them on the inactive list. Of course, that person, when they get the notice, they can also there's a form. I don't believe only Clark County has the form that says, I do not want to be I no longer live here, please remove me. I don't believe any of the other counties have that same form. At least I don't believe they did during the last election period when we were doing research.
It's also available online too. We push people towards vote.nv.gov. There's a quick link at the bottom to cancel registration. It takes minutes.
For the Secretary of State's website.
From the Secretary to the counties, though, in near real time.
I mean, we're moving forward. So yeah, so I think that those are really, I mean, I think that process is, because it is an actual statutory authority, it needs to be within the guidelines that they have that option. It cannot just be like, well, it wasn't really working in the past, so it's not included in the guidelines. It has to be in there because they need to know whether or not that's something that they want to do. Some of the smaller counties, Clark County may say no, and then they're going to have the public saying, look, you can do this. The county commissioner saying, look, you can do this, do it. Or like substance counties like Humboldt County, they may only have 3 that go out every month, so they're like, this is great. It's I get my list maintenances are going to be clean and things of that nature. So I really want to make sure that section really has something in there that we move forward with. I think it is very important that those statutes and that procedure is available. The other thing, and I also want to I'm going to try to just maybe go over one more thing, and then I'm going to offer my services, obviously, that we can sit down and you told me to really delve into it and mark it up. I was really hoping that before I would do that, you guys would put your statutes in there so I could look it up, and then I would be able to really tear it apart or compliment you, obviously, because I do believe that this is really good in many cases. And then we get to the same thing on the page 23, which is other list maintenance sources, which is what I was talking about. It says, to protect voters, the Secretary of State recommends that counties request an affidavit explaining the basis for asserting that a voter has changed residence. That's the problem with that is that you don't have NRS 293.535, which is where you provide an affidavit that someone's done the residency. So you have no idea what they're talking about. And the thing about it is that statute specifically tells you what the registrars need to look at. It needs to be a statement. It needs to be the addresses, things of that nature. It's a very easy thing to do, but it does not require an affidavit asserting that, explaining the basis is really this person used to live here, and now the person lives in another state, and here's their address there. Those are the requirements that you need to have. But then it says the county should confirm information through independent vetted sources, such as the United States Postal Service change of address database. Well, under NRS 293.530 and even 293.547, there's no mechanism for them to independently vet sources. Now, 547, there's going to be an independent evaluation by the district attorney if there's someone there, but we're wasting a little bit of time and causing the clerks to do more than they need to. Once the challenge under 293.535 is filed, the notice needs to be sent out with that affidavit to that individual. So there's no, can they? Is there anything that is illegal about it? Is that going above and beyond the law? Yeah, it's going above and beyond the law because it's not required. They still have to send that affidavit. One, the individual that is being challenged has a right to know that they have been challenged. So regardless of what the challenge says, or if anything, if it shows an address and it says what it's supposed to say, it has to be done, whether they went off and said, oh, wait, we can't confirm this through Eric, or we can't confirm it through our necessary means. No, the challenge has been made, and it needs to be processed accordingly under NRS 293.535. And that's another reason why when you're talking about vetting sources using the national change of address, we know that is now a reliable source if we're going to use it to vet those things. So we do need to, there's nothing in here, again, about it's kind of difficult to understand whether it's a challenge or if it's an affidavit, because the statute is kind of one of our many statutes, but it just requires an affidavit showing that person is a registrar, is now no longer on them. But I think that something needs to be in there that says, once you've received this form, this is what you need to do. You need to automatically send it to that person, because they're entitled to know. They're entitled to know if they're being challenged in that regard, and whether or not they're for example, they're in school, or they are in the military, or something of that nature. The thing that is also important is that when we send these things away, it's not just we're protecting a person's right to vote by giving them the opportunity to say, no, this is me, and I want to be voted, or something of that nature. But it also gives us data in order to figure out what is working and what is not. Okay, so if the Registrar of Voters may think it is something that is problematic now, but as we move forward and it starts going, and you start doing list maintenance, and you do the things that I've just put in there of why they're important, they're going to be, we sent out 950,000 voter notices because we had 950,000 notice of change of addresses, and we only got 100,000 back. that said that all 850 of them were valid. Well, you're going to go to the legislature and you're going to say, this is not really something we want to do, or the registrar under its own authority is going to say that we're not going to do it anymore. But until they know whether it's something good, we're not going to understand that kind of stuff, and we're not going to provide really good voter protections. So I leave it with that. There are many things in here that I really appreciate you guys doing. I will certainly contact you in the next few days. I mean, I just got this in front of me a couple days ago, and I'm more than willing to sit down with you and provide my comments as you guys go forward with this. I know it's going to be daunting, and I know that, as you stated to the other public commenter, this will be a living document for many, many years, and we will continue to work with you on that.
Well, thank you for your comments, Mr. Amaro. Very much looking forward to collaborating with you on it, and appreciate the feedback.
Great. Thank you.
Seeing no one else in Carson City, we'll go on to Las Vegas. For anyone interested in making public comment on Chapter 2 of the Elections Procedure Manual.
Yes, my name is Ed Euling, and congratulations for going to these extent to make sure that the registration or the records are clear about who is authorized to vote and so on. But it's one thing to have registration that's clear. It's another thing to misuse this registration. And that's what your boss and you did last year or 2 years ago. The nonpartisan candidate is required to solicit signatures of registered voters, and in my case, I submitted registered voters in the district which I was running. Some of those people had moved since they registered, and because of that, your office eliminated those people who had moved, even though they were all moved in the same district, and there was no reason to eliminate those signatures from my solicitation, or I've forgotten what's the name of the document is. And so it's great that you're getting accurate records, but it's not great that you're misusing these records. All that I was required to do was get signatures of registered voters.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Euling. We'll review the chapter and make sure that, and you'll see as we move forward with our review of the procedure manual over the coming days, chapters 4 and 5 cover candidates and campaigns, and chapter 5 covers petitions. And I think we'll likely have some meaningful discussion around the petitions chapter. But thank you for your comments. Seeing no one else in Las Vegas for public comment, broadcasting, is there anyone on the phone, please?
If you would like to provide public comment on Chapter 2, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good morning again. This is Iris Stone again, IRISSTONE. And before I begin, I want to just say, yes, thank you so much for the enormous effort that is going into updating this information. It's very much appreciated. And I hope that you take our comments and my comments in that spirit. With that, let me talk about voter challenges on page 17, the change of address section that pertains to maintaining the accuracy of voter records by cross-checking voter addresses against data from the DMV USPS National Change of Address, or NCOA, and the Electronic Registration Information Center, ERIC. Overall, this process has been very reactive, time-consuming, and I know we try to be more and more proactive as time goes on. And I believe that there's another data source that potentially should be helpful, and maybe multiple, and that's what I want to bring your attention to. I think the Nevada Secretary of State's office should consider implementing a more modern and proactive process by using commercial data to help manage voter rolls in real time. Besides the USPS NCOA, another reliable source of change of address is the proprietary change of address, or PCOA. This is a supplementary service using private data from sources like magazine publishers and credit card companies. While NCOA is USPS certified and catches many changes already, the PCOA would capture moves from people who didn't file an address change with the USPS. In addition, some states are looking at credit card bureau data like Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax. And additional sources could be utility records and other verified public sources. Once the data would be flagged using these sources, the existing NVRA recommended process for verification can be used, right? In other words, the county clerk sends a mailer to confirm the correct address. If the voter doesn't respond, he or she is marked inactive until further investigation is completed, etc. Adding some of these new sources, I think, would save significant taxpayer dollars. Less election mail to be sent out, including mail ballots, less returned election mail to be processed, recorded, and reported, including mail ballots, and it would alleviate workload in the election administration. This would lastly result in more accurate voter rolls, and that only increases voter trust in the election process. I hope you will consider this consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Mark Voloshin for the record. Appreciate the comments. I will stress again one more time that if there are statutory changes or regulatory changes that enable the use of additional programs for list maintenance purposes, we'll certainly then include it. But in the meantime, again, until there's kind of been clarity in what we can do additionally, the procedure manual really is intended to describe how things are occurring now and not necessarily to expand upon other statutory or regulatory options. But I very much appreciate the feedback. I will look into those options, the PCOA in particular, and see if we can incorporate that into some future discussion about list maintenance processes. But thank you.
Good morning. This is Oscar Williams from Reno, Nevada. My name's spelled OSTARWILLIAMS. I have 3 points I'd like to make regarding signatures. These things are not in the manual now, and possibly they should be. So starting with the fact that we have 3 different sets of tools to capture the images. For example, you go to the DMV, it's got a fine tip stylus, a hard plastic stylus on a glassy signature pad. When you go, and that's a statewide way to capture, statewide agency that's capturing images. And then you have 2 offered by the county. One would be when you go to the polls, you have the poll books. That has a stylus with a fat rubber tip on a glassy tablet surface, different than the DMV. But also the county offers you a paper and pen where you're scribbling your name on paper, and then that is later scanned into the system by the county. Of course, when it comes to forensic signature verification through a natural person, pen on paper is preferable. But our system now, it digitizes all the signatures for later recovery and comparison, right? The issue that is formed, so those methods of capturing might be something worth mentioning in the manual to establish them at least. But ideally, what's missing is what is called the pixels per inch, PPI, is undefined. Is it 200 PPI, 200, 300, 400 PPI? The federal government offers guidelines 300 PPI for standard quality images, but 400 PPI for more detailed, sensitive images, such as a signature on a voter registration form. I think the manual would benefit from having clarification on the PPI for digital signature images for the recording, storing, and reproduction of or retrieval of when you're comparing a signature. I got one more point to make, and I'd like to ask you a question, Mark, if I may, because you mentioned before an issue of private information. Can you please clarify what is private information, and more specifically, is my signature private information? Can you answer that, please?
Absolutely. Mark Voloshin for the record. And thank you, Mr. Williams, first for calling in. I was hoping that you'd review the document and make sure that the agenda got to you, so I'm happy to hear that you did and had a chance to provide feedback. So to your question, private information, there's a statute that defines what personally identifiable information is, and that information that's protected. Examples include your Social Security number. The Secretary of State does not retain full Social Security numbers, but for purposes of registering to vote, we do have a database that includes individuals' last four of their Social Security number, if provided, or Nevada driver's license number. Those are both, for example, private information that is not provided or released, except in criminal investigations, really. Does that answer your question?
What is the statute you're referring to?
Mark Voloshin for the record. If you will give me just a moment, I will check and see if I can pull it up. One moment, please.
Okay. Well, while you do that, you didn't mention signatures, and my understanding, at least in terms of the federal law, signatures are private information. So my final point is, it's a positive one, is, by the way, I had a nice meeting with the Registrar of Voters, Andrew McDonald, in mid-October, and we talked about how signatures vary and the need to maintain updated signatures. And I think that's a good idea, even though it may not be statutorily mandated on a more frequent basis than I think is necessary. Listen, between each election cycle, what does it hurt to send out a letter saying, you're welcome to update your signature so we have an accurate record of any little changes or subtleties in your signature over time. I know my signature has changed over time. And so that's, from my point of view, a welcome thing. But part of it is we had a signature drive earlier this year, and it was a postcard. I'm not signing a postcard and sending it through the mail, okay? If you want to update my signature, if you want me to update my signature, it has to be in a sealed protected envelope. This is a problem you have with your current mail ballot envelopes. Signature is exposed on the outside. Is my signature private information, and is that ballot legal? That mail ballot return envelope, it exposes my signature. Is that really legal? When we talk about private info, what does it mean, sir? And what statute are you referring to?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Williams. Mark Voloshin for the record. 2 points. One, the statute that identifies personal information is NRS 603A. .040 NRS 603A. And the second point, signatures under existing statutes are not private. Want to clarify that as well.
Well, I think that's a violation of federal law. It's my impression that signatures are private. They certainly should be. It is the gateway to protecting my valuables. Anybody that has access to my signature can easily forge documents, steal my house from underneath me, create requests for government benefits, Social Security numbers in other states. And this is exactly what's happening around the country. Identity theft has cost Nevada, I think it was a 2023 FBI thing, over $157 million. Right? Your answer that signatures are not private is inadequate, sir. And I really wish that you would go back and look at that and reconsider that, because if we're going to have a problem going forward, if my signature is not protected, I will refuse your elections that expose my signature, whether it be updating my signature or mailing in a ballot. It's not okay. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you for your feedback, Mr. Williams. We will certainly take that back and review it. And if it is appropriate for a potential suggestion during the upcoming legislative session, the upcoming regular legislative session in 2027, it may well be that gets discussed there. But until that time, sir, appreciate the feedback, and we'll continue to keep you posted on how that discussion develops.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We have no additional callers for public comment on Chapter 2.
Thank you, Broadcasting. With that being said, we will close public comment on Chapter 2 and move on to agenda item number 8. This is public comment on matters other than the Elections Procedure Manual. Comments in this case will be limited to 2 minutes per person. If anyone is interested in providing public comment about a matter not on the agenda, please come forward. We'll start here in Carson City. Seeing none. Las Vegas. Seeing none. On the phone, Broadcast, can you please check on the phones if there's, this is for the final public comment on matters not on the agenda, please.
If you would like to provide general public comment, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Again, please press star 9.
Good afternoon, Oscar Williams again. I could ask it as a question or as just sort of a statement, and it would be the president has created an executive order back in March regarding election integrity. In my understanding, he's preparing to do another one that would deter us from universal mail ballots using certain equipment. And I guess I'd like to ask it as a question, but what's your response to that? Or should I just do as a statement like, we need to do this. I think this is the right thing. You take it either way, sir. Balls in your court. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Williams. Mark Voloshin for the record. For this section, as it is public comment not related to the procedure manual or the agenda, I think it would probably be most appropriate if you could make the statement, and then potentially if there's interest in discussing it at a future time, we could set that follow-on meeting up, please.
Very well. As a statement, I think that it behooves the state to consider the executive orders by the president. One was issued, I believe, March 25th, and I understand there's another one that is forthcoming. This could have significant impact on how elections are conducted. Certainly, there would be an effect on the election procedures manual as a result. It tends to lend itself to less reliance on vulnerable electronic systems and greater reliance on natural persons to check in voters, verify signatures, hand mark paper ballots, hand count paper ballots, so on and so forth. And additionally, we would like to see more precinct locations. I think vote centers are not the best way to go for various reasons, but that's a larger discussion for another time. That is my statement. I appreciate it very much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Chair, we have no additional callers on the line for general public comment.
Thank you, Broadcasting. We will close the final agenda item 8 for the general public comment. And agenda item 9 is an adjournment of the meeting. I do want to remind everyone that tomorrow we will have a similar meeting. And again, on Friday, tomorrow we'll cover chapters 3, which is elections, chapter 4, candidates and campaigns, and chapter 5, which is petitions. And then on Friday, chapter 6, city clerks, chapter 7, election security, along with appendix A. So again, those are on the website, nvsos.gov. If you look under election resources, you'll find the link to the elections procedure manual, and it's also included in the agenda. That being said, appreciate everyone's comments and involvement today. This public meeting is adjourned. Thank you.